Hello, I'm Carlos, and this is Bright High No Limit. In this episode, I'm speaking to Ricardo Autobahn of the Cuban Boys. Ricardo kicks off explaining how the Cuban Boys all started.
1997, the summer of 97, I was on holiday from university. And as what everybody did back then in the mornings was to check the teletext for music news. And somebody had written a letter into Planet Sound saying, we're starting a fanzine. Is anybody out there likes 80s music, synthesized music, Gary Newman, ZTT, that sort of thing? So I sent them a tape of the songs that myself and my sister had been recording since childhood on a little 4-track at home. And those people starting the fanzine were two reprobates called Screen B and VL Underwood. And they lived in Eastbourne. And we sort of sparked up a friendship and a sort of interaction in these early days of the internet as well. To the point that a year later, I dug out an old track I had recorded and I sent it to Screen and I said, why don't we form a band and release this? And it was a song called Cuban Boy, due to the fact that the sample was from a song called Cuban Boy. And that was the summer of 1998. We sent it to John Peel. We come up with the name Cuban Boys off the top of our heads, in absence of anything better. And we rose to superstardom very, very quickly.
That's excellent. And your use of teletext was the Planet Sound. Was that when it was headed up by Stephen Eastwood at the time?
It very much was indeed. We thought, obviously, the internet was in its embryonic phase then, but our campaign was based around the teletext mainly. We'd met on the teletext, and the music pages were very important for keeping track of things, and the interaction was much greater than the internet was back then. So you wrote into the letters page and you could see it the next day on screen and you would get reactions and interactions from other people. So we based the entire Cuban Boys ethos around writing a load of fake letters to Stephen at Planet Sound under various names. We worked out how to trick the computer into sending emails with various different responses so that you could fake your identity, as it were. So every day we'd send in umpteen emails saying, oh, we heard this great song on John Peel. Oh, has anybody heard about the Cuban Boys? Oh, somebody's been at school has been talking about the Cuban Boys, and so on and so forth. And every day one would get printed, or every couple of days, and it snowballed into this mental sort of chaos, whereby Stephen knew what was going on, I believe. Maybe not at first, but fairly soon he twigged that we were gaming the system. And he got us on to do a full kind of interview thing, despite the fact we'd not released any records, and all we were really doing was sending CDs to John Peel, who was playing them happily. But no, our first proudest achievement was getting that sort of 5 or 6 page interview spread on Planet Sound without really being a real band. The first interview we ever did with EMI on board was for teletext, because we wanted to celebrate our roots. And they say the whole, you're there in these huge offices and this great machine going around you, and they're going, yeah, we'd like to be interviewed by teletext first, please. And they support it as they let us do it. They seemed a bit baffled by the whole thing. I don't know if they really understood the importance of the teletext system to new music back then. And frankly, they didn't understand anything back then, quite frankly.
No,
that was when the time when Napster was coming in, and they had no clue what was going on.
It's called Conoscentivus Intelligentsia, and it came about when my cat died. And the evening she died, to cheer myself up, I found this sample off the internet, and I did this little tune, and we expanded it into a full-length 3-minute piece. And we sent it to Peely just as a sort of almost work in progress, just to entertain him, just to give him something to listen to. And he played it on air, and we got this extraordinary reaction from the listeners. Most requested song since God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols, so he claimed on air. To the extent that, as a direct response of Peely playing it, we inexplicably signed to EMI Records.
I'm not asking that. No clues. Okay. You've got to say it yourself.
Okay, cognoscentia versus intelligentsia.
good enough, I think.
Thank you.
Round of applause, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers. Got to number 4.
We did the Christmas Top of the Pops, and S Club 7 and Steps was sat opposite us, glowering at us for beating them in the charts. We won the battle, but they won the war.
Well, it was certainly quite remarkable because at the time, obviously, the Christmas number 1 was still quite a coveted prize.
Yeah, I mean, at some point about October or November, EMI had suggested they put the single back to January because it's a very slack time for singles in January, and you can always usually hype your way to the top of the charts. But then Joe Wiley never gets a mention in our archive. It's always about John Peel, but Joe Wiley actually played it every day at lunchtime, and that inspired EMI to push the button and do it in Christmas week.
So how did that song actually come about? Was it the Dancing Hamster internet page on GeoCities?
Yeah, that was it. February '99. So yeah, we'd done our first Peel session, and we thought we were going to be on pop stars, and we hadn't quite become pop stars yet. Although our career was going at a breakneck pace, so we shouldn't really have become pop stars by then. But no, Jenny, my sister, said, "Have you seen this website?" And yeah, we thought it was very funny. And then I realised that, back in those old days, it would save the WAV samples or the MP3 samples on screen to a little cache memory on your computer, and which was very easy to get to. So I plucked the sample out, put it in the Cubase studio program we had, and then we just sat there for about 10 minutes, dicking around, basically, with this sample. And it made us laugh an enormous amount. We thought it was a very funny idea. And it just sort of, it made no sense, really. All those film samples that are in it, they don't mean anything. It was just us trying things out and seeing what happened.
News for you now. So Cliff Richard's hopes of a #1 hit this Christmas. He's been #1 for 2 weeks. He'd have to hang on for maybe this week. But it's under threat, and this is where the threat is coming from. A group of dancing hamsters. In a sign of the times, it all started on the internet. This is what you can see if you log on to this particular web page. That soundtrack was so well liked, the entrepreneurs behind it have said, hey, let's make a pop record. Let's remix it and turn it into this.
Don't be too happy. After some months of this, you'll be smacking your lips in the forest on me.
It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? I don't know.
What computers were you using back in the day for that? Was that just PCs?
Yeah, just a piece. I'd had an Atari ST for many years with a little plug-in sampler on the side. The reason we sampled Cuban Boy in the first place because it was the only thing this sampler would actually accept. It could sample like 2 seconds of audio, and the loop on Cuban Boy was just under 2 seconds, so it was a technical matter. But by then, the family had got their first internet-connected PC in summer '97, and had like a Sound Blaster 16 card on it or something like that. So the hamster sample was really lo-fi anyway, but all the musical samples on it and the film samples, they're all at like 8K or something like that. They're really crunchy, lo-fi samples, purely because of the limitations of the technology we had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. So, was that your first dalliance with computers, or were you sort of like playing with computers before you got into experimenting with music?
Oh yeah, the Atari ST spread that started. Got that in '87. I got the Atari ST. This is interesting. Bear with me. It's interesting. We moved when we were kids. Me and my sister Jenny. Our family moved house in summer of '87, so we couldn't go on holiday. And to placate me and Jenny, our parents bought us presents, and I got an Atari ST, and Jenny got a little tiny Yamaha keyboard, and that was the first time I'd ever started playing music. So that Atari ST and that tiny little Yamaha keyboard that we got for not going on holiday really sort of sparked the whole musical career about 12 years before it actually happened.
Oh, that's brilliant! Yeah, because it was the perfect synergy, really, isn't it? A keyboard and a computer as well. I've been reliably informed by a mutual friend of ours called Reese that it wasn't your first dalliance with a microcomputer, though.
No, I know what you're aiming for here. You're aiming for the fact I wrote a game for the ZX Spectrum, aren't you?
I could be. Do go on.
Okay, so yeah, we had a ZX Spectrum in the mid-'80s, and we had the Quill and the Illustrator, and you start messing around with those. And again, like the music, it's just you trying things out and just doing stupid ideas. So I ended up almost accidentally writing an entire game, which was called The Bimbles. It was a parody of the Wombles. Bearing in mind, I was a child. I was a child. This isn't high art. This isn't high satire. It's just a child writing a terrible computer game. Purely by accident, I finished a game, and I thought, well, I'll send it to Crash. And inexplicably, Derek Brewster in the Crash Adventure pages reviewed it and gave it 79%, which is about 79% more than it was worth, quite frankly. It made me a celebrity at school for about a week.
So can you still find that game? Is that on the ZX archive or anything like that?
It is. It's around some. I've definitely seen it, and I've definitely been to look for it, and I have downloaded it and played an emulator. It is cool, but it's out there somewhere. Mm-hmm. I think there's a solution to it printed as well, because somebody wrote to me saying, I don't know how to do this game. So I sent the solution to them. And the solution that's printed on the internet is the point I'm gradually approaching. It's something that I have written in a letter to somebody about 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it also says somewhere on the internet that the game can't be completed due to a bug, but I don't know. I don't think I've ever got that far in it.
Well, it lacked proper playtesting back at the time, but then I suppose you could adapt it to get to the end screen anyway. So but fast forwarding back to your time at the Cuban Boys, it must have been absolutely incredible. What does it actually feel like to get signed by a major record label? Is it as rock star as I think it is?
You don't really appreciate it at the time. That's the thing about the music business and subsequent projects I've done, because I did the Eurovision some years later, and we did me and my friend did a record with Glenn Campbell a few years later as well, and all these things you look back and think, wow, that must have been exciting, but at the time you never really enjoy it as much as you should, because there's everyday life continues to go on around you. So even though you're on your way to London to sign a record deal with EMI, you're still trying to think, I've got to make some money somewhere, I've got to go back to my job, I've got to sort out something with the house or something like that. All the things were still buzzing around your head, and you never really sink into it enough to enjoy what's going on. It still felt amazing, and you're telling people, we're signing to EMI Records, it's a big deal, and people are impressed, but it never really felt like the cinema experience that you always thought it was going to be.
I guess, when you're in the cut and thrust of it all goes past quite quickly. But do you have any sort of showbiz stories from when you were performing?
Glorious memories. Well, let's see. We did Top of the Pops. It never got shown because it was Christmas week, so they only ever showed the #1 record at the Christmas chart. And then by the time Top of the Pops had sort of returned from its Christmas break, we'd plummeted down the charts. But no, we met all sorts of people there who were all seemed very excited to meet us as well, which was exciting. Jamie Theakson, the world's tallest man, and I held a door open for somebody from Eiffel 65 of Blue Dabba fame.
Yes, that rings a bell.
S Club 7. We remember S Club 7. We were sat there in the Top of the Pop Star Bar opposite S Club 7, and our press officer came over to us and said, would you like to do an interview with Top of the Pop spin-off programme? And we said, no, not really. And S Club 7 looked aghast. They didn't realise you're allowed to turn things down. They did everything. They did everything we're told. And here were we, these young punk upstarts with our novelty record, saying, no, we don't want to do any interviews.
Was there any sort of like artistic message that you were sort of like trying to convey as an end game? Because it came across obviously as a novelty record, but the effort and the production values that you put in are highly original.
Well, thank you very much. There was this idea when we started, things deteriorated artistically quite quickly because we realised all the samples we were using were very difficult to clear. We ended up having to re-record samples and recreate them and things like that. But the idea for our album, which was called Eastwood after Stephen Eastwood himself. He deserved better, to be honest. It's not a very good album. But the idea of the album was that we were going to go through the 20th century and we were going to sample things chronologically through this sort of hour of music. And the last song on side 2 was going to be what we imagined the Christmas #1 would be, the Millennium. And it was the Hamster Dance, of course. And it was going to be this inane 20-minute version that was just round and round and round and round and round and stupid. Happily, we thought to edit it down, and inexplicably, it almost became the Millennium #1, despite being originally conceived as a pastiche of the Millennium #1. If you see what I mean.
The serial number of your record, I noticed you thanked Stephen Eastwood. Actually, you acknowledged him on the on the centre sticker of the 45.
Yeah. Oh yes, on the Oh my God, the Kilkenny single, yeah.
That's right, yeah. And I was just wondering about the serial numbers, because they were, the serial number, that was FU0006. I wondered what the FU stood for.
No, that was not a rude joke on our behalf. That was just merely the name of the record label, For Us Records.
Obviously, John Peel played a big part of the Festive 50. I think you not only once did you get featured, twice in his Festive 50.
We're actually in the Festive 50 loads. I can't remember how many times we got in with our assorted crackpot ideas, but we had 2 number ones in the Festive 50, which is quite a feather in one's cap, really. It's a sort of thing we're quite proud of. It was one of the great milestones we achieved. Number 1 in the Festive 50 twice. You know, and you look at the Festive 50 we were in 99, and we're ahead of some legends of indie music. Hefner, Gorky's, all the big names are there, and
all the behemoths.
Yeah, we're all there, and then we're there perched at the top. And it's always, I'm most proud of it, and I'm most infuriated that nobody still remembers us. We're very forgotten, and we should be celebrated and carried around the streets aloft, quite frankly, for the success we had.
Well, why do you feel that's the case, though? Is it just that everything moved on very quickly musically? Did you see a sea change in the music scene when your record was released, or does that happen to every artist?
What essentially the problem? There's many problems that you can look at in retrospect. I mean, having a Christmas hit is always bad because it kind of gets lost and people forget about it unless it's Christmassy. Having the Christmas hit on the Millennium is also awkward because it's not a 90s record, it's not a noughties record. So when they do the greatest, it's the 90s, it gets ignored. When they do the greatest, it's the noughties, it gets ignored. They might have ignored it anyway, but that's the reason. And then when we sort of came back with the second single, we were troubled by the lack of money we'd earned because of all the money had gone to Roger Miller, who the sample was from. So we did an original song for our second single, which was a mistake, and it all sort of fell apart at that point. The record company said we're not going to put the single out, but we are going to put the album out instead, and we'll see if that'll kickstart Cuban Boys again.
Number 20, it's down 2 for Robbie Williams. She's the one, and it's Only Us. At 19, a new entry. Various artists for the Children's Promise. It's Only Rock and Roll. 18's a new entry. DJ Luck and MC Neat. A Little Bit of Luck. And at 17, down 10, Progress, The Boy Wonder, and Everybody. 16, falling 8 places. Len, Steal My Sunshine. Falling 4 at 15, Macy Gray, I Try. Sliding 8 at 14, Wham Do Project, King of My Castle. Down 3 at 13, R. Kelly, If I Could Turn Back the Hands of Time. And down 3 at 12, Boyzone, Every Day I Love You. This week's 11, sliding 6, is Alice DJ, Back in My Life. And now, here's the Christmas Finger Boys, Kiss When the Sun Don't Shine, down 7. 9. Falling 5, William Orbit and Barber's Adagio for Strings. 8. It's a new entry, Mr. Hanky, the Christmas Poo. 7. Steps, double A side, a new entry, Say You'll Be Mine and Better the Devil You Know. 6. Artful Dodger, down 4, Rewind. When the crowd say ball, 5. S Club 7, You're My Number 1 and 2 in a Million, a new entry. 4. A new entry, Cuban Boys, Cognoscenti versus Intelligentsia, the Hamster Tune. 3. John Lennon, back in the chart with Imagine. A place after 3 weeks at number 1, Cliff Richard, The Millennium Prayer. Win the entire UK Top 40 next on Radio 1 as part of Dance Anthems with Dave Pearce. That's after the last Christmas number 1 of the millennium. And it's a band who now have had 4 number 1 singles in 1999. Swear It Again, 2 weeks at the top in April. If I Let You Go, number 1 in August. over. Another number 1 and still on the chart this week at number 28. Flying Without Wings. And now they've done it again for Christmas 1999 with the 4th single of their career and the 4th to enter at number 1. It's Westlife who become the first.
I always put my love of stats down to the charts in the 80s, watching things climb and fall and what have you. I think it was about the mid 90s. I'm trying to think, 95. By then, they'd started this target marketing. You'd fill in a little postcard you got with your CD single and send it off. And then when the next singles came out, they'd send you a postcard to tell you when it was in the shops. So everybody would go out and buy it in the week of release. And you'd end up with these high new entries that would then drift down the charts. And I remember there's a week in the chart. This is chart chat. This is chart trivia. Boring, dullness. But there was a week in the charts, I can't remember, it must have been 95, when On the Bible by Deuce was listed on the chart as the highest climber, but it hadn't climbed, it just stayed where it was. But because it had increased in sales, it was the highest climber. And I looked at the entire chart from 1 to 100, and every single record had gone down because of records coming in high. And that was when everything started to get a bit tedious.
You mentioned earlier on about your Eurovision.
Can you see me disc there?
Yep. So yeah, you're showing me. Is that the red one or the gold one that you got there?
The red one is I don't know what it signifies actually, but it's for the Eurovision song. It was 2006. Sometime after the Cuban Boys, we'd sort of split up because nothing was happening. And a guy called Daz Sampson got in touch with me just purely out of chance on the internet because he had an idea for a record, and my Cuban Boys history made him think that I was the man for the job. So we struck up this working and friendship, which led through a few crackpot novelty records in the early noughties to, at some point at the end of 2005, the Eurovision people phoning up and saying, have you guys got anything? And lo and behold, we did this silly kids rap record. And they absolutely went for it, a bundle. They loved it. So the show, who was on it? There was a guy out of Blue was one of the other contestants. Anthony Costa from Blue was one of the contestants. Kim Marsh was one of the other contestants. Another singer was a couple of girls from a Scottish soap opera. It was the time when they'd put up a load of acts to represent the UK, and the viewers would phone in and pick them.
Yeah, the Song for Europe programme, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, you had to ring in.
Yeah, was it called that, or was it called Making Your Mind Up? I can't remember.
Making Your Mind Up, yes, yes. Yeah,
but yeah, so it was some, you had some big name record companies and some semi big name stars were there, and then me and Daz, these sort of urchins off the street, had rocked up with our oddball rap record, and yeah, he did it, and I remember being there in the TV centre watching them do it, and the crowd just went mental. And once it all died down, Jonathan Ross just said, that has to win, and the crowd went mental again. And at that point, I thought, this is it. We're going to Eurovision, and we did. It was ridiculous.
Back when I was young, thinking on my school days and trying to write this song. Classroom schemes and dreams, man, they couldn't save me, because my days were numbered when I signed down on
Everything about that was so wrong. Somehow it became right. It's got to win.
Where was it held that year?
It was Greece in that year. So Daz got a week in Greece, and I got a weekend in Greece, being the writer, all at the licence payer's expense.
And did you meet any Eurovision royalty while you're out there?
A couple of divas of yesteryear walked past, because they'd walk around with a film crew in tow and meet the new stars. But I shamefully didn't know who any of them were. But I did meet Lordi. Now, do you remember Lordi? They were the heavy metal band who wore the horrifying gothic costume.
The Icelandic types, are they?
They were Norwegian.
I'm ever so sorry. My apologies to my Nordic listeners.
Very, very terrible.
Yes.
They had big face masks and claws, and they looked horrifying. It was like something out of a horror movie. But I met them in the hotel, and I saw them in full costume in the hotel swimming pool, funnily enough. Which was very exciting. I'm sure you looked great.
Wait, were they swimming?
They were, yes. They were in the pool in full garb.
Oh, wow. Well, that's quite an insider thing there, really.
You see some things, I tell you, when you're a minor pop star.
Oh, no, that's brilliant. And the other endeavours that you're doing as well is the Poundshop boys. Is that very much something that's alive at the moment?
me and a friend of mine is a guy called Phil Fletcher, and he's a puppeteer who you might know as doing Hackatee Dog on CBBC, the famous Normal Man, Innocent Men, Hackatee Dog, Gonk. And we're both big Pet Shop Boys fans. And one day he said something like, wouldn't it be funny if the Fireman Sam theme tune was in the style of Pet Shop Boys? And having a lot of time on my hands, I thought, you know what, I'll do that and it'll make him laugh. So I did it, and he came around and sang it. And we made a video, which I filmed him against his sitting room wall, and he filmed me against his sitting room wall. We filmed it it took 8 minutes to do, and it's it went ballistic on YouTube.
He's always on the scene. Fireman Sam and his engines running clean. Fireman Sam, you cannot ignore. Sam is the hero next door.
We did Banana Splits, the Tra-La-La song from the Banana Splits. And because Phil is an expert puppet maker and puppeteer, he made puppet replicas of the 4 Banana Splits. And that's had millions of views on YouTube. It's gone quite crackers.
And that's brilliant. And also, you've done a cover of Fireman Sam, and you've done one in Welsh as well, which is Sam Tan.
The aforementioned legend that is Reese.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, yes, I implore people to download that, because every penny from that will go to some charities, and it is well worth it. And also, Fireman Sam famously always was Welsh in the first place, and the great mysterious Welsh theme tune that we in the UK never got to hear. It's quite an exclusive sound.
Brilliant, and I've really enjoyed listening through it. And one thing that's really sort of struck me with the whole of your career and all of your endeavours in all the various incarnations that you have, it all goes back to the web, really. It's sort of like you embraced the technology so early.
It was very interesting at the start, in '98, when we were doing all the teletext business. The hype all came from the teletext. As an aside, I remember us getting a meeting at Virgin or something, just because some guy had read about us on teletext. They didn't ultimately sign us, but it was a real sign that people were paying attention to teletext. Well, the internet was fascinating because everybody was talking about it, but it was still very, very small. So you could do things and people would pay attention. Nowadays, the sort of stunts that we pulled back then, we could do, and nobody would even notice because they'd just get lost within the first second. Back then, we pretended that the Cuban Boys were Noel Gallagher and Paul Weller, who had inexplicably made a dance record. Noel Gallagher did end up going on MTV to deny that he was the Cuban Boys, and that was another early success for us. It was a very brief thing, but we managed to get a lot of mileage out of it, a lot of press coverage out of Noel just saying, "No, I'm not Cuban, bye." And what we faked an Oasis news page on the internet, just a bit of HTML, and sent that out, and people reported it, and it spun off itself. This compact nature of the internet meant you could get away with crackpot ideas. Nowadays, you've got to be a lot more creative in your thought and put a lot more effort in as well. I mean, if you want to sort of become an internet star, you have to spend months just churning out TikToks until one goes sky high. Back then, we just did a fake website.
I enjoyed as well the Satellite Junkyard from 2014. I found the sampling and the music on that really impressive, and I loved the videos as well. Did they take a lot of effort to make?
It was Screen did all the videos for that. Finding all the found footage thing was our found footage era. That album was very much what we should have done for EMI, full of samples and full of links and crazy things going on. But because when you're on EMI, you've got to do it properly. Legally, it's very difficult. When we just did it ourselves and nobody really cared, we could just put out whatever we wanted, and it was full of illegal samples and all sorts of things. So I don't recommend you listen to Eastwood, but I do recommend you listen to the Satellite Junkyard listens. It's far better. It's great.
I say I was terribly sorry. I say I was terribly sorry. I say I'm terribly sorry. I say I was terribly sorry. I say I was terribly sorry.
Well, I'd say it was all good. So listen to all of it.
You're very kind. You're very kind.
So the Cuban Boys are making a return at the moment.
it struck me that I've got this intellectual property in my hands, this a hit band I'm not doing anything with. So I put together last year a sort of a live set. I bought a projector. We've got videos and screens and all sorts of things going on, and yeah, the idea is I'll do a few test shows this winter, and we'll aim to do some festivals next year and stuff, and we'll play all the hit, ladies and gentlemen, all the hit. And, a few more surprises and things.
That's brilliant. Well, I hope you're about for a teletext 50th birthday party. Maybe we can book you for that.
We're in.
Our
fee is extremely small.
It'll probably be about September, and I'll probably get you a can of Fanta or something for your effort.
More than I deserve. I'm in. I'm solidly 100% on board for this.
Well, that's on tape now. So
it's an actual tape, listeners. He's using tape, listeners. He's using tape like an old man.
I've still got tapes. This one's actually Carter USM. I was just wondering what sort of influences you were listening to before you started, making stuff for the Cuban Boys. What were your musical influences?
It's funny you should say, Carter, because they were one of them. I always really loved the way they sounded. So incredibly like they were just doing it in their front rooms, and yet they were still massive sounding records. There's so little to them, but they end up sounding so huge. I always really loved that. Carter and the KLF, people like that, was always our main. What's the word I'm looking for? Totems. Copy.
Yeah,
we tried to go to the KLF and failed, but we had a go.
Well, the KLF would think that they failed as well. So everybody, I suppose, is all quite subjective. But no, it came straight into my mind about Carter as well, because their uses of sequences and where they get samples from and all that. It's when you're listening to the music back in the day, you think this stuff's so easy. But if you have a go at dabbling with it yourself, it's the most difficult thing on earth. So hats off to you.
I don't know if this is the case with Carter. I do know it's the case with the KLF. They always used to say they tried to make really commercial records, really pop records, mainstream records, but couldn't quite do it. They did it slightly wrong. I think that's the case with Carter as well. It looks like they're trying to make really commercial pop records, but do it slightly wrong. And in the doing so, make something far, far more interesting and give themselves far more of a fan base and a career. That's what the Cuban Boys always tried. We were always trying to make normal pop records, but because we didn't have the gear or the equipment, or we didn't really know what we were doing, they always end up sounding a bit weird. And I think that's our unique thing.
The one thing that I find challenging with the title Cuban Boys is that when I ask Alexa to play it, I actually do get Cuban music.
Yeah, I know. I've never been very good at naming acts. And the Cuban Boys, it was literally off the spur of the moment, top of our heads thing, just to write on a cassette to send to John Peel. It sounds good. It sort of sounds like a dance act. It's kind of commercial sounding, but then when you look into it, there's so many millions of Tokyo Cuban Boys and Spanish Cuban Boys and all these different Cuban Boys playing Latin music from around the world. You just get lost. It's ridiculous.
I mean, if I sort of say, play the Cuban Boys and your hit comes up and it gets played, does any of that money come back to you or any royalties?
It's a mystery, quite frankly. We didn't write. Well, we wrote like 12% of Hamster Dance officially. I don't know. I honestly don't know how it works. Like I'll get you do 1,000 streams or something. I'll make £2 or something like that. It's something like that. But it's still good. People say, "Oh, you don't get paid for Spotify." And I'm saying, yes, I know it's terrible, but keep using it, because the more you stream my stuff, the more chance it has of getting on a playlist. And if it gets in a playlist, it's got more chance of getting another playlist. If you get some more playlists, then you get the chance of getting out into the real world, into filtering into radio and things like that. And it has the chance of really getting the snowball rolling. So it's a necessary evil, I think.
And thanks again to Ricardo Autobahn for taking the time out to speak to me about Cuban Boys, the Poundshop Boys and all his other endeavours. Before we go, it's important to say that the Cuban Boys John Peel sessions from the 13th of the 1st, 99 will be available for pre-order on vinyl and download if you visit preciousrecordingsof.london.bandcamp.com. Please do visit Cuban Boys UK on YouTube for all of the albums that have been clipped and uploaded to this podcast. And please also pay a visit to poundshopboys.bandcamp.com, where you can have a chance of purchasing Sam Tan all proceeds of that go to local charities in the Swansea area. So I implore you to do that as well. Housekeeping details, just to wrap up. Thanks as ever to all the people that take time to listen to the podcast, share it and tell everybody else about how good it is. And also to the people that do donate via Ko-fi. All proceeds do go towards hosting the podcast and promotional materials. You know, it doesn't set me back an awful lot of money. It is a hobby, but every little does help, and it's nice to know that you're appreciated out there. Byte High No Limit is presented by me, Carl Attrell, and is a Byte High No Limit production. And until next time, keep it blocky.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.